So super excited to be here with Alanna Imbach from Vibe Coworking. She's the CEO and founder. And honestly, I think I just saw you had spoken somewhere and I saw it pop up on LinkedIn. I'm like, we've never had her on the podcast. And I literally sent you a LinkedIn message and you responded back. And it might have been like a month and a half ago now. I think that's when you got on. So super excited to have you on. You have a really unique background, as so many people that we have on here, but yours is exceptionally cosmic with the UN and, just your service for people outside of the industry. And so thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
And you've had a challenging day, same as I have. We got to connect on challenging IT things, right? So, and I think that's part of it too. Is sometimes we get to deal with things that aren't always sexier, luxurious, but yet it has to be done. So I'm glad you're able to get that resolved to some extent. But it sounds like there's a little bit more work that needs to be done.
It was exactly my thought this morning. I thought, the easy button would be to call and cancel this. The more let's pivot and adapt is like, let's find an iPad in a corner and make this happen.
Well, I appreciate you adapting, even though I gave you an out. So, and I think that's part of it. I mean, this is part of being an entrepreneur and running a business. So why don't we kind of start with your background and kind of how you even got here? Where are you from? How did you get into serving people and ultimately end up here?
Yeah. So I'm essentially grew up in a town called Poulsbo. So if you're in Seattle, you hop a ferry over to Bainbridge Island and then cross a bridge to come over to the peninsulas. Is where I grew up. Great, amazing area to grow up. I left, never thought I would ever be back. My real passion was for travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to do cool things at a global level. And then, which I did. So I spent 17 years all over the globe. And then how I kind of ended up full circle, I was living and working in New York City. So I've been working with the UN World Food Program is what brought me back to the States. And then I was working for an international nonprofit called WaterAid. So John, as we were talking earlier, I got a deep background in the water side. And we hit a point where we had outgrown our office space and we had been paying under market rent. And so it was a much harder prospect to try to find a new office space than just, well, let's move house over to the next office. So as it happens, one of our board members is married to Benjamin Diet, who owned Grind, which was one of the early co-working spaces in New York City. And so
I love Benjamin. This is awesome. He's an OG.
Yeah. So they said, look, the solution is everyone's going to work from home one day a month or one day a week, and each team is going to go work at Grind one day a week. Mm. And when they proposed this, I thought, this is the worst idea in the world. I don't want to commute. I don't want to lug my thick Lenovo laptop everywhere. You're going to break up team morale. I was very vocal about the fact that I thought this was stupid.
Wow.
And then we got into these spaces and it was my first experience with co-working and it was totally transformational, right? Just the way that our team was thinking, the people we were meeting in the co-working space. So fast forward ahead, we decided to move back, my family and I, back to Poulsbo where my family was. And we got here and all we'd known were the cool co-working spaces of New York and there was nothing here. And so we decided we needed to build one for us to be able to work remotely. I wanted to keep my job working in the water space, working internationally, but I needed a place to do it here. So that's how our co-working space first started.
So the UN, how did you get in with the UN?
Oof. So I was fortunate to get a full ride scholarship to go do my master's in Madrid.
Okay.
Loved it. Didn't want to leave. Ended up working for the Spanish Commission for Refugee Aid up in Barcelona. And it was at the height of it's continuing, but it was really at the height of the boat people crisis when you had a lot of folks coming over from West Africa going over to the Canary Islands. There weren't return agreements at the time. So I was involved in that world. And then all my visas expired. And I had to leave the Schengen zone, which pretty much left me with Geneva, where the UN is based.
Yeah.
Or leave Europe and go someplace else. So I was lucky enough to get my foot in the door in Geneva and stayed working in kind of the UN system for a couple of years.
That's awesome. And then WaterAid, you'd mentioned, John, we were just talking about that. John and Fuse do master cares in Uganda. So it's funny that I didn't even think about, honestly, the only reason I saw that is because I got John to join because funny enough, like I mentioned, Jamie is in Spain.
Mhm.
So John's one of my go-tos. And it's funny when I sent the LinkedIn, I went ahead and read it and I saw the water thing and I was like, that is so cool. I just how interesting that is. And so how long were you in that initiative and kind of how'd you work through that?
WaterAid, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So WaterAid was the job that I took when I had had enough of the UN. So I was really happy to be able to work in an international environment, but with a lot less bureaucracy,
Yeah.
and feel a lot closer to the work. So I was working for the US office. The organization is based in the UK. So I was with them for 5 years and I was with them when I moved back out to the Seattle area. They were super supportive of the work that I was doing and opening up the co-working space, excited about the opportunity to be closer to our West Coast donors. And they, of course, had experienced all the benefits of co-working along with me, right? So they knew how transformative it could be on an organizational level as well as a relational level for the team.
Cool. And when did you leave them?
So I ended up leaving them. We opened Vibe Coworks and so we built and designed our entire building here from the
So
ground,
who's we?
shovel
Let's
in the
start with
ground.
that. Who's we?
Me, my husband, my family.
Okay. Cool.
So it was a project.
Okay.
And like I say, when we built it, it was so my husband and I could continue working remotely from here. And then probably, gosh, I don't remember exactly, 9, 12 months into it, it was becoming pretty apparent that to keep the day job and run this place was just not happening and wasn't doing justice to either side. So I parted ways with WaterAid so I could focus entirely on the co-working side.
Okay. And when I looked at your LinkedIn, you have Matchstick Labs and Uproar Consulting. What are those things you get to do with your husband or you're doing on the side or what is that stuff?
So up our alley is kind of my independent consulting arm as I pick up
Okay.
projects as and when. Matchstick Lab was born unexpectedly unplanned out of the co-working space, right? So we're a relatively, so if you take like the population of the whole county, we're talking like 250,000 people. If you were looking at the closer population of what's really our market on the co-working side, we're like
Yeah.
maybe 30,000 people, right? And there hadn't been any co-working spaces of this size or with the commitment to the community building that we've had until we moved in. So what happens when you put a bunch of cool, interesting, ambitious people all close together and you create that density and proximity, they start to do cool things and they start to work on projects together and build businesses and you start to see the innovation start to kick in. So as we got, a few years into it, the number of innovation and entrepreneurship related workshops and brown bags and training programs we started to do as the co-working center space just grew to a point that was no longer really sustainable. And so we said, let's spin up this other brand name, spin up Matchstick Lab, and let's start stamping that on everything we're doing that's related to innovation and entrepreneurship. And so now where we're at, they're kind of sister organizations in a sense. So Matchstick Lab is fiscally sponsored under our community foundation, which allows us to operate as a 501c3. It opens up different funding opportunities for us and allows us to fund the programming that we do within the co-working space that can support the growth of entrepreneurship within the community.
And I saw the futurist label on there. So is that just how you're looking at the future or did you go through some type of certificate? Like I know Liz Elam went through a futurist certification program. So what's that does you just
I'm not a certified futurist. I love looking at the future. I love imagining the possibilities of what's coming
yeah.
down the pipeline and kind of helping people to think bigger about doing things differently than the way we've always done them. But
Okay.
no, definitely not Liz caliber on that one.
But I mean, but I think it takes being able to do that, right? And it's funny whenever we talk about Juicy versus GWA, that's often what I tell people is Liz is awesome at looking at the future and where we're headed, kind of the whole Wayne Gretzky, where's the puck going?
Yeah.
And I like to say at GWA, we kind of like focusing on practical things that we can implement today, right? And so I think it's two awesome ways to serve the industry and the world in different capacities while still, you know, trying to make a difference. And so I love that side of it. So let's talk about the space. How big is the space? Kind of obviously we live in this dynamic world of co-working, executive suite is a combination of the two, private offices, vents, all that fun stuff.
We're tiny by standards of most of the rest of the industry, right? So, like I say, we built this truly amenity rich building. So, the whole building is 40,000 square feet.
Okay.
And then within it, we have our co working space is about 7,000 square feet. But we built it so that we have within the building, there's a bean to bar chocolate shop and cafe. We've got a destination liquor store. People come from all across the state to come and get liquor at this 10,000 square foot liquor store. We've got a farm to table restaurant up on the same floor as us, and there's a speakeasy in the basement. So what it means and the way that we've kind of put this all together is even though I only own and operate the co-working piece of it, the building was designed to be integrated so we can host, it's almost like the size of a mini conference center. So for the folks that the conference center is too big for, they can come here, do training things in our space and kind of circulate between the different venues in the building and kind of have a bigger footprint, I guess.
And so as far as the space goes, what's the layout kind of?
Layout is, I would say, probably more on the traditional side in the sense that we've got about 7 private offices. And then we've got a mix of kind of cafe style seating that also transitions into our large event space. And then we've got a main co-working space with all the typical phone booths. We have a designated like silent half of the space as well. So for the folks that want just really limited numbers of people and heads down, that's another piece of the co-working side. So more traditional co-working.
And as far as members, what does that look like? How many members do you have?
We're usually hovering about 250
Okay.
in regular monthly members, but we've got a lot of day pass users,
Yeah.
a lot of conference room users. So we have a lot more people than that are flying through.
And is there a seasonal business for y'all based off of?
Good question. There used to be, right? And then
Okay.
COVID hit. Like I used to be able to tell you exactly what the trends are going to be. And I think since COVID, the seasonality that we used to know and recognize, it's all over the place. Right now is really interesting because Seattle is, of course, a host city for FIFA. So
Yep.
World Cup is here. We've got a fan zone 15 minutes away from us.
Mm.
And the area where we are, if you've got, city of Seattle over here, you ride a ferry over to the islands in the peninsula. We are the place where everyone goes to go hiking. So in the summertime, we do see a lot of folks that are coming over to go camping and like the family's off camping, but the one person's got to be here working or they've got a summer cabin over here. But that's not necessarily to say that there's more people here in the summer that there is in other times, just kind of a difference in types of people that are here.
Okay. It's always interesting to me to see small. It would be fair to call it a town.
Yeah.
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 And kind of where their business is coming from and kind of how they're servicing the overall population, as you will, and how people are flowing in and out of. But I think that how y'all curated the building is so cool. So were you part of finding those users, if you will, for the restaurant and the speakeasy and all that? Did you and your family have part of that? Did you hire a company to do it? How did y'all?
It's all family. So this was a piece of land that my grandfather had owned for years and
Okay.
hadn't done anything with. My cousin owns the chocolate shop and the liquor store, and they were, a few miles down the road. And initially, when we came back and were looking to open a co-working space, we were just finding it. I'm like, let's find an old barn or gas station and get a few people in and call it good because our focus was on our day jobs, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we weren't finding that. And so I happened to be talking to my cousin one day, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I got to find some place to move to. The liquor licensing rules were really weird. And so if he needed to move, it had to be a minimum of 10,000 square feet, right? So I kind of told him, I was like, hey, like, what would it look like if we had a place where you could eat and you could work and you could drink all in the same building? Let's go talk to grandpa to see what his plans are for that land. My family are general contractors for commercial buildings. So we could then turn around to them also, and they understood the vision, and it was a fun project to be able to. I mean, we're truly one of the very, very few co-working spaces that's had the opportunity to build from the ground up, right? And benefit from everything we learned and experienced visiting dozens of other co-working spaces before we started on this endeavor.
And to do it with family, how incredible is that, right? I mean,
Exciting
that's
and
pretty
terrible at the
cool.
same time.
Yeah, yeah. I can only imagine what Thanksgiving is like. How do we not talk business at the table?
Yeah.
As far as the speakeasy, is that run by the restaurant and liquor shop or okay?
Yep. Yep.
Now I'm real curious. Now I need to come visit just
Yeah.
just just to see that the integration of all those things.
Yeah. It's a great space. And particularly for this area, I mean, when we opened, very few people had ever heard of co-working, right? So for them to understand what this co-working space was, what this odd kind of combination of businesses in a single building was, it was a fun, and working through it even just with permitting was a fun experiment.
All right, John, help me out with some ops questions. I know you're the
Well, I
op.
mean, I've got about 8 screens open right now, but since we're talking about the building, it's called the Centennial, I believe,
That's
and
correct.
it's got a lot of my favorite things in it. It's kind of a dream come true. A chocolate shop, gourmet chocolate and coffee, I think. Is that right? Or just chocolate? Farm to table and a liquor store, and then you can work upstairs. Did you design of the building is amazing. Was that born out of just commercial real estate, or did you have a vision for the way you wanted to design the building for co-working specifically?
Probably a combination of both. We worked with an architecture and design team here locally. So I should say the entire building was designed remotely while my husband and I were still living in New York City, right? So it was all done remote. And the architecture and design team that we worked with was fabulous, longtime local architects, but they'd never done co-working either, right? So we took our designer, we brought her, we flew her out to New York, we showed her around a bunch of spaces so she could also understand what we were trying to describe to her. But it was a really interesting process, probably not unlike designing for other commercial spaces, but it felt like we had a unique opportunity with her where we literally started with a wall with 3 circles on it. And it was like, who are the users of the space and what do we want their flow to be? And then we'll design how everything else spaces out. So one of the things that I think has been key to us here, from personal experience, I hated working in co-working spaces where I'd be there working as an individual and the meeting rooms are at the back and a full group like traipses through to go to the
Right.
meeting and then they get out of their meeting and they want to sit and talk and it totally messes up my thinking.
Right.
So we designed this space in a way that you could get to all the meeting rooms in a way that feels comfortable without really disrupting anyone who's here in the co-working spaces or in the private offices. So we learned a lot from designs elsewhere, really.
Yeah. And when you get to design a building from the ground up, you think about where am I going to put the
Yeah.
stairs? Where am I going to put the elevator? Where to make it a better fit for co-working, right? Isn't that's a fun thing?
For me, moving back, like I said, I've been gone for 17 years. My biggest concern with moving back to the Pacific Northwest was whether I'd be able to handle the gray, right? Because I'd been living in sunny places or more seasonal
Yeah.
places. So I told the design team, I said, I need you to put in every window you possibly can
Uh-huh.
into this space.
Yeah.
So they did. So we have amazing natural light.
Right.
So much so that when we went to like hang artwork, I'm like, we have no walls to hang artwork on.
Well,
But we
let's
also had members who came to me and they said, look, like I have seasonal affective disorder.
Mm,
And I had one member who was with
right.
us through the winter season and we got to like April and she came to me and she said, oh my God, I just realized I went through this whole season and never took out a sad light.
About it.
But the difference was she'd been here with actual natural light and
Yeah.
made a difference.
Well, speaking of art, let's touch on that real quick. So the city or the town that you're in, I live in a town, so we always buckle when people say city, but you live in a town, it's a smaller town, but you have been able to, it seems to me, kind of become the center of a lot of activity in your town. I like to say for our brand, Fuse Workspaces, where X city works or gets, it's where we gather to do work. When you think about the sheer number of businesses that are concentrated in one address, it's really amazing. It's obviously what sets co-working apart, flex office co-working. But in your case, you've got a large conference room, event center, I guess is the better way to say it, right? And you've got meeting rooms, but you also have an art wall. Can you tell us a little bit about that with local artists? That's awesome.
Yeah, so we call it our micro gallery. So it's basically 2 walls in our main co-working space. And we, sure, we could have gone out and bought art for it and called it good, but we really felt like so much everything we've done with this space is built around people and the community and how do we create connection And I also really like, it's so easy to become trapped in that lane of, this is a tech space or this is a whatever space. And people are slow to see the connection between the arts and tech, or, name your quote unquote disparate sectors. So we've used that micro gallery. Every quarter, we invite in a different local artist and they get to have their art up for the quarter. We don't take any commissions on it. We tell them, if you want to sell it, put your price tag up there, put your contact info on there and sell. But it's been a really fun way to get to know some of our members better, right? Like there's members that you had no idea they were artistic until they come and display their art. And it's become a space where a lot of the artists, not all, but a lot of the artists are new and have never shown their work publicly before. And so this has felt like a safe space for them to be able to do that and like get over that kind of scary hurdle. And it's been fun to see what some of them have then gone on to do after that initial part too.
I love it.
And we get cool decoration on our walls.
You can morph that into Vibe Coworking has talent, and you could do some, let's expand beyond just the painted canvas. Let's see who can sing or dance or.
We have a lot of musicians here, and that request has been made to have some
Okay.
here, and I haven't
Let us
quite,
know how that goes.
I haven't quite given that one the green light just yet.
I was going to say, we could be onto something here today. This could be a thing for community building. Speaking of, Giovanni, kind of a last question for this first session here is that you mentioned you're very purposeful about getting those groups together in community, and you find that maybe somebody's in marketing and somebody's a web designer, somebody's doing AI, and there's a nexus there. But you have to be somewhat purposeful about that. Sometimes it happens around the coffee machine and in the co-working area. But what have you been doing, and probably this touches on your other ventures, to really equip people in being entrepreneurs, or what have you done to connect the dots in your space to these different disciplines, these people?
That's a big question.
It was.
I would say from
way too long. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I'm going to come back to it, but I'm going to actually start back at the space design piece, because one of the things that we did very, very intentionally was put the kitchen as soon as you walk in the door, and the front desk is right by the kitchen. So it's given our team the opportunity to basically overhear, not in a creepy way, but to be engaged with essentially all of the conversations that happen in those informal settings of the lunch table and the coffee machine and first encounters as people are coming in the door. So that helps immensely with actually getting to know the people who are in the space. And you can't connect people if you don't know the people who are in the space, right? So we try to really, just in terms of how we interact with people, disarm people in a way, because I think we're so used to walking into spaces and being guarded. I remember when we first opened, what people were used to doing was coming into a space and distributing business cards like poker chips, right? And I said, put the cards away. I don't even want to know what you do for business. I want to know who you are. And that culture shift took, maybe a full year, right? That people would look kind of shocked when you tell them, and then they don't quite know how to act with that. But culturally, it's so ingrained now that it's become a space where people do actually take the time to get to know each other. And I think with Matchstick Lab and the entrepreneur programs that we're running within the co-working space, one of the things that we've really been trying to remind people, is that we all have something to teach. We all have an expertise in something. And so, a lot of these conversations around mentorship, it's like you could be the builder on the side that's building something just as easily as you could be the person on the mentor side. So we're grappling with that a little bit right now, trying to figure out how to both keep it organic and potentially, I don't want to say formalize, but make it a little bit easier for people to find, like, hey, this is the water expert, right? This is who I want to talk to. And we're trying to figure out how to do that in a way that is sustainable.
All right, let's talk about hubby. How'd y'all meet? What does he do? What do y'all love doing together other than building amazing businesses?
So my husband's name is Marcel. He is from Switzerland and actually was part of a work exchange program at a tiny little cabinet shop up in Ferndale, Washington. And he was doing that when I was going to university there. I turned in my senior thesis and went to the bar and met him there that night. So we got a lot of people, because I lived in Switzerland for 5 years, there are a lot of people that assume we must have met in Switzerland, but in fact, we met in this shady little bar up by up by Bellingham, Washington.
Hmm.
But his expertise is in architectural mill, which conveniently applied wet great to the co-working space, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the wood features and things that you see here in our space are ones that the architects designed it, but had no idea how to actually put it together or make it happen.
That ceiling is really cool behind you.
Yeah.
I was looking at that.
Yeah, it's cool. So that's his baby. He figured out all the engineering behind it, hired the team to make it happen. So he's been instrumental to a lot of the certainly initial design build work here and a lot of the behind the scenes operations still, but he actually owns his own company doing architectural millwork.
Okay. And who picked up who?
Ooh, the funny thing is I went out that night with a male friend of mine and he went out with a female friend of his, and the two of them were mutual friends, so they knew each other. And we both thought we were in pairs across the table. So there was no picking up. We thought it was basically a double date that night until
That's
later.
funny.
We realized it wasn't, and he called me first. Once we figured it out later.
That's all. And so did y'all basically date there? And then how did it, was it immediate connection? Was it because you were living there, right? So what happens when you graduated?
So we met in June. Like I said, it was days before graduation. I was already on track to go do my master's in Madrid, as I mentioned. I told him, I'm leaving in a month and a half. I want nothing long distance. Like, it's been good meeting you. Goodbye. And he was like, that's fine. I moved over to Spain. His visa was up. So I moved in whatever that was, September. His visa was up in February. So he basically touched down in Switzerland, left his suitcases there, and then came down to see me in Spain. And then he was still living in Switzerland. We never lived in the same city until we got married 7 years later. So we had 7 years.
So much the no long distance thing, huh?
Yeah. So he was all over the world and would come stay for a couple of weeks. But yeah.
That's so cool. What are your favorite things about him?
Oof, good question. We love traveling together. He's a great travel buddy. We love to adventure together. We just got back this last weekend. We were at a wedding down in Sundance, Utah. That was super fun. We had a lot of laughs. Riding the gondola up, not the gondola, riding the chairlift up to the top of the mountain for the wedding ceremony. All the fancy clothes. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So y'all love traveling together. Any kiddos? Dogs?
We've got twin girls that are graduating from 5th grade tomorrow. So it's an exciting week in our household.
It's amazing what they make. Obviously, big festivities over. Like we had an immersive event in Toronto, and Robin, who works for us, she's like, my daughter's graduating from pre-K, so I'm taking a late flight in for the next. And I was like, don't even come. I don't want to run the risk of you missing the flight or having delays. I mean, it's storm season everywhere right now, and so I was like, just don't come. It's fine. We'll figure it out.
It is funny because my girls were what, a year and a half when we had the crazy harebrained idea to even start the co-working space. So this is all that's known, right? And so they give tours better than half my staff does. Like, this will be their first job. They have no memory of anything before there was co-working in their life.
That is so cool. And sports, do they play any sports? Do they dance? And what are their hobbies other than co-working entrepreneurs?
So soccer's been the long time thing. Their most recent that I have so much to learn, they've started playing water polo.
Wow.
So I'm learning lots about a sport that I played all the sports, or I thought all the sports growing up, but this was one I know absolutely nothing about. I had no idea. It's so aggressive. They come home covered in bruises.
And how do they get into water polo? I mean, sometimes I scratch my head on some of these. I don't know anyone that plays water polo, but I'm in Texas, so I don't know. Maybe it's a Washington thing.
I don't know. So there's only one team close to us here.
Okay.
They're exceptionally good. They just won state. They're headed to regionals here pretty soon. This is a long story, Gio. They were COVID victims in terms of swim lessons, right? So COVID hit, all the swim lessons got canceled. They never really had formal swim lessons. They taught themselves to swim. They think they're excellent swimmers. And I'm like, you maybe have a ways to go, but they're too old and too cool for swim lessons now, right? And
Okay.
so I had seen a random ad for a 3-day like girls clinic of water polo. And I told my husband, I was like, well, they'll think they're playing with a ball, but they might get 3 days of swim lessons in it. Should we just throw them into it? So our 3-day trial of water polo to learn some swim skills has now turned into a very dedicated sport and a learning curve that I have a lot to learn still on how it all works.
That's awesome. All right. Logo behind you. Be kind. Is that just part of the painting? I mean, is it something? I mean, do y'all have a kind of slogan? Kind of what's your mission for the space?
So work happy has always been kind of our slogan, I guess. We've always said that we're here to help people work happier, healthier, and more connected. This was a local artist that we brought in to do this. Can you see the paper airplane?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it was two local artists working together. The Be Kind is kind of his trademark with a lot of his artwork. And he put the work happy over on the other side. But the paper airplane, they painted each of their kids into the airplane. So it's a really fun kind of tribute to them. And they did it. We've got another mural in the space too. They did both of our murals here.
That's awesome. No, I was looking at that earlier, and between that and the roof or the ceiling, I was like, man, that's really cool stuff.
Yeah. It's a good reminder to people too to like just see it straight come in and it's like just be kind. I think like so many spaces, we've tried to create a space where everyone feels welcome here, even having some really divergent opinions and perspectives on things. And so it's nice to have that just kind of reminder straight up front of like, hey, we want to hear what you have to say, be respectful about it, and let's have some interesting debates and be happy working alongside each other.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that was going to be one thing I was going to ask you about is just with your incredible background and diversity that you've been all over the place. Obviously, we're an interesting place in our socio-political and just humanitarian efforts, if you will, is how do you tackle some of those difficult conversations amongst your team, amongst the members, just in society in general? I mean, obviously you have an incredible background, so you have an ability to handle those things better than most people can. There's people that probably have never left that island or at least not the state. And so would love to get your perspective on that.
Well, I would start by saying we're not perfect either. So we're learning as we go. But I think
Yeah.
the culture that we've created has helped a lot to be like, hey, we are gonna, we've got some set values. We are gonna talk about things.
Yes.
Where Kitsap, where we're located, is a very purple county.
Okay.
So from political perspectives, we've got people all across the gamut. One thing we haven't talked about, we're a major area for the Navy. So we've got some major naval bases here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've met a lot of Department of Defense influence, both in political perspective, but also people who've lived all over the world, all over the country, and bring those perspectives in with them. And I think the approach that we've really just taken is, calling it out when things have been out of line, being really humble and saying, hey, like we're learning along with you. This is making some folks uncomfortable. Can we talk about it? And we're trying to, I think we're living in a day and age where we kind of have our places and spaces that are generally people a lot like us. And so to have a community space where it could be people who are very different from you all sitting around the table, like we don't even know how to interact in those spaces anymore, right? So we think we can't say something or we give a little side eye. And so we're working to help build that culture, both with our staff team, but with the
Yeah.
members that are here and try to do something a little different, maybe old fashioned. I don't know. Is that old fashioned?
Yeah.
Used to sit at a
No,
bar and everyone had their opinion and you could still shake hands and be friends with them.
that's the problem is people can't do that anymore. Like I'll give you a great example. I'll tell you, Ben and I hardly see eye to eye on anything, from there, but I love him.
Mhm.
Benjamin is amazing. He's one of the most humble, loving men I know. And it was so funny because we'd have these debates on social media and then we'd see each other and I'd give him a big old hug and a kiss. And, and people can't do that anymore. Right. And it's like people want to take their ball and go home. And it's like, no, we all need to sit down and have conversations that are difficult and help each other grow and meet each other where we're at. I mean, that's one of my things I tell people all the time. Just our job is to meet people where they're at. Right. It doesn't mean that we always understand it or like it, but that's what we're called to do.
Yeah. The one thing I'm very proud, actually, I think there's a perception from the community, which I hope is true, more than just a perception, but of this being a neutral space. So there have been times when there have been some really heated things happening with the school district, for example. And they've said, can we come and hold this town hall there? Because this feels like a neutral space that people aren't going to already be on edge. We've held a lot of the political debates here. We have 2 members who are elected officials now and one who's running for office right now. And so it's been interesting navigating, some of those election night parties. How does that sit in a space like this? Right now, we're grappling with, even campaign materials. It's perceived that, if one person brings it in, it's perceived that we're endorsing. And we're like, no, like all the candidates could bring it in. Like maybe we'll create a designated space on the wall. But it's hard. It's constant. It's not like you checked it off once and you've got that box. Yeah, it's just you're constantly having to address it.
Yeah, and I'm John. I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit here, but slash give you an opportunity to talk really. But that space you're in is so typically Fuse is in the suburbs of Austin. They were in the suburbs of Dallas before, which is where the team is based. But when they started looking at this space, it's off of Martin Luther King, right outside of downtown Austin. And that was part of the big, what do we do? You're kind of going into a different environment, right? And so part of the conversation was had is, well, what happens when people want us to fly a certain flag or celebrate certain things? And so, John, I mean, talk about how you've kind of had to find, balance with that, because my response to John was like, well, do you fly any flag? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, so that's your answer is that's just, we're not going to, and I think that's where we're at is people put, especially when you're running a business like you guys run, is like, if you've got to pick a side or a team, and it's like, no, we're team people, right? We're here to serve. So, John, how have you guys handled that? You and I haven't had this conversation.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think I heard a study that was done on fandom. Is that a word? Like sports fans, right? You're a fan of the Seahawks or you're a fan of the Cowboys or whatever. And they discovered that when you're a fan of something, that brings you together more than a lot of other things that you would have thought would bring you together, like religion, ethnicity, where you live. So if I meet another Arsenal fan, I'm an Arsenal guy. If I ever see an Arsenal person, which is rare, I will run to that person and I will say, can we talk? In fact, at Juicy, there's a whole bunch of Brits there from, I can't remember where they were from. Giovanni, you may remember, and they were all Arsenal fans. And it's like we were best friends. So how does that relate? Well, we're building a brand that we hope people are fans of. And part of that, which relates to what you do, is that behind me is our Do More wall. And we have one of these in every building. And it highlights something that everybody can be excited about, which is serving the underserved in parts of the world where there's no clean water. And as you know, clean water is a luxury that, we can't imagine what it would be like. I mean, in Dallas, they're having to boil their water. People are complaining like that's the worst thing ever. You have clean water coming out of your taps. I mean, so people can get behind your brand, they can get behind your building, they can get behind what you do to support the community. And that's why I like what you're doing and what other co-working companies are doing. You're building a network of people that can support this. And it binds us together. Oh, you're a member at Vibe. Oh, you're a member at Fuse. And you told a story earlier about collaboration. One time I went to one of our buildings, it was after hours, and somehow these guys had broken into, I don't know if they broke into it, maybe the door was ajar, a conference room. And they were all in there and they were whiteboarding. And I said, what are you guys doing in here? Like, first of all, you're supposed to pay for this. And second of all, what are you doing? And they said, we're brainstorming the next great idea. They had never met before they were in Fuse. I mean, they had not connected. And they love the space and they're advocates for the space. And I'm telling a very long story, just set you up. But the way that we try to navigate these various perspectives, and they're all over in your building, in your area, it's very interesting. Seattle, one of the most, left-leaning parts of the country, but you got naval bases right there adjacent to you. So, and same thing here in Austin. I mean, it's very purple, Austin. Somebody called it the blueberry and the tomato soup, but it's purple depending on where you're at. But I love that I, as whatever I am, can chat it up with. I mean, one of our biggest clients here is Weed Maps, and they're not a landscaping company. I love it. You know, we've got political and all that. So tell us about how the design of your space is so interesting to me. You talked about that earlier. And one thing that I noted is that you don't have a lot of private offices relative to the square footage. That had to have been intentional because a lot of the theory is, and you designed the building, so you understand this. And private offices, a lot of people would say that's where the money's made. Co-working is not as big of a money maker, but there's a philosophy behind that I'm guessing was a part.
You nailed it. So we were sold out on the private offices before we drywalled in. And we looked at it and we said, you know, we have the opportunity to put a whole bunch more private offices in here if we want to. But we knew it had been very intentional, that proportionality between the types of workspaces that were in the space. And we knew if we put more private offices in, sure, it would bring in more steady, stable revenue, right? In 9 years, I've had 3 office turnovers, right? That's it. I mean, these people are in and they've not moved.
Wow. That I've never heard.
Yeah. So, but the problem with it is exactly what I think you're pointing to is you go into a private office and sure, they come out for coffee, they come out for lunch, but you don't have that same cross-pollination that happens when people are in the other types of spaces. And that was so important to us because we felt like this community at this time, what it needed was that density of people and ideas and cross-pollination. And
Wow.
sure, 8 years on, is it time to open a space that's got more private offices? Maybe. But it was really critical and intentional with what we were doing.
And to be clear, Vibe is for profit, but you've got a nonprofit wing that is amazing. You mentioned foundation. So can we just drill down on that? Do we have enough time briefly to tell us about how your foundation relates to the business itself? It's your philanthropy arm, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So what we've accidentally stumbled into is we've become ecosystem builders, right? So we're kind of pulling together. We have this network of people. We're like, hey, we need the people. We need the innovation side. We do a lot of contract work actually with the Navy's innovation arm as well. Be like, we got the innovation piece. What this area is really going to need ultimately is a capital pool of some kind that can write checks back into these companies that are doing this work in the co-working spaces, right? But in this early stage, we don't want to make assumptions as to knowing exactly what that capital structure or tool even looks like. And so we didn't want to jump immediately into setting up our own 501c3. So as we were talking to the community foundation, they said, well, let us incubate you. You're onto something. We want to see this grow within the community, but don't rush into the 501c3 part. We can be your fiscal sponsor, which then means there's a fund at the community foundation that's 501c3, which makes it possible for us to receive grants and things that support the educational program inside of what we're doing with Matchstick Lab.
Wow. I probably will connect with you another time about that.
Love to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I just want to end it with you just kind of sharing where the passion for people comes from, right? Did you have it as a child growing up? Was it instilled in you? Was there an event that you looked up to? You're like, man, I want to make a difference in the world because you're making a difference. You've made it globally and now you're making it on, an island in a town. And it's so, I don't want to say it's rare, but it kind of is.
Yeah. I think, it's funny. I had a lot of self-doubt and a lot of questioning of like, what the hell am I doing when I left, this career that I had dreamed of all my life, right? I wanted to be an international. I wanted to go on the UN side and then to move home, right? To small town when I was used to being in big cities and do this co-working thing. Like it felt like it was the opposite of everything that I built towards for years. And when I finally sat back and really looked at it, I was like, oh my God, everything that I was doing internationally was the community development part, right? It's taking some of the world's biggest problems that seem so insurmountable and then just trying to broker the right people around the table to be like, no, we can chip away at this. This is a solvable problem. And that's exactly what we're doing on the local level, right? We're coming into a place, no one had heard of co-working. There was no entrepreneur community. the resources weren't there to get some of these companies. I always tell people, like, why can't we do the work that we love from the place that we love? Why for so many years did people have to leave this
Mm.
area and go into Seattle or New York or San Francisco? With everything being remote accessible now, you should be able to build the world's biggest companies from right here. So there is a lot of overlap in surprising ways between what I was doing internationally and what I'm doing here. And I think for me, the most rewarding piece of it on the people side is seeing that aha moment when people are like, oh my God, I can do this, right? Like, I have the resources, I've got the people, I've got the connections. I chose to live here because I love the quality of life and I love the region, but I no longer have to choose between two things.
Well, you're certainly making a difference, and that's obvious. It can be seen from here, and so and I just love the idea of your twin daughters basically touring people through the space. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And well, I really appreciate you taking time to tell us your story and to share. I hope you get your IT issues resolved and that you have an amazing week. But thank you so much for sharing that story with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. And it was great chatting with both of you.
Of course.